It's hot. And to add to that heat, we're going to talk about something that also adds heat to our atmosphere around here, to the little air we breathe.
Yeah, lay it on me.
It's called the
aliens.
Alien ray guns that are really slow, and they make us think that it's global warming, but really they're burning us up like a magnifying glass of our ants.
That's what my mom tells me.
My mom's a xylophone. Damn it. I shouldn't have said anything.
I love you, xylophone.
We're going to talk about the Santa Ana winds, which have a sort of mythological folklore around them. They're also referred to as the devil wind. Raymond Chandler called it the red wind in the story he wrote about them. Well, it's not about them, but it starts off talking about the red wind. They're strong, they're dry, they're very unpredictable. It's a desert wind that comes from beyond Palmdale and sort of rushes over us.
Is there anything beyond Palmdale?
It's Palmdale than Vegas, right? If I know sleeping in a car, supposedly, when the Santa Ana winds start blowing through the city, crime rate rises, suicidal thoughts increase, people get irritable, they start suffering from headaches. The winds are strong, they rock cars, they set off alarms. I read somewhere...
Are we sure you're not talking about rioters?
You know, I got confused. They're both 4-letter words. I searched 4-letter words. I read somewhere that in the 20s, there was a small home in Pasadena that was picked up by the winds and carried over a neighbor's house and crashed into like the third house over.
Wait a minute. Again, I think you're talking about the Wizard of Oz. We're not in Pasadena
It crashed anymore. Into a house with little people. They all started rushing out. What is this?
These little feet were in there. It was disgusting. I curled them in.
And then the little guy came out of the house. He met a lion named... What were we talking about? Oh, yeah. So supposedly the Santa Ana winds were so strong in the 20s. Picked up a house, threw it a couple houses over, leveled that house. Somewhere in Pomona, there was a guy working on a roof, a chicken farmer, and the wind picked him up and carried him 100 feet, then dropped them.
I thought you were going to say he was making a bet with the farmer next door. Chickens don't fly.
He's dead now. He was picked up, carried by the Santa Ana winds, then dropped 100 feet, and he's dead. He died by the Santa Ana winds.
Death by wind.
It would have taken Philip Marlowe about 146 pages to crack that case. Santa Ana winds are always dry.
Did you just call them the Santa Ana winds?
I might have said Santa.
Go on, proceed.
The Santa Claus winds. Santa Ana winds are...
I don't know who that is.
You know, mistletoe, presents, you know. This whole podcast is going to be me like trying to tell you what Christmas is.
Christmas?
A tree in my living room? That's not where it goes.
With turkeys and hams and all sorts of goodies? No, thank you.
You've got socks hanging over your mantelpiece.
All I need is my cold soup that I've been warming on my heater. Please.
Leave cookies out on the chimney. What am I, a rat collector? Santa Ana winds are always dry. It's pretty much a result of where they're coming from, which is like the Great Basin of Nevada and Utah. They usually come through about fall or early winter. The winds can be really hot because they're carried over from those dry areas. And they're one of the reasons why September is the hottest month in LA. They're most noticeable in like September, November, right as the rain season begins to start. But they're pretty much what's keeping the rain away.
They blow the rain away?
They blow the rain away.
Okay.
They just keep it dry around areas.
They blow the rain away.
They blow the rain away. Above the Santa Monica Mountains and in Orange County, the OC, if you will, that's where the Santa Ana's winds can be felt the most. They like go up to like 110 miles per hour, which is like Category 3 hurricane speed.
A lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about, Orange County gets hit the worst.
It does.
For everything. There are little, like, if we're a porta potty, they're the little hole that everything goes into.
I have no problem with that. That's where the Santa Ana winds end, is Orange County. It carries everything from...
Everything ends in Orange County. The American dream ends in Orange County. Then it starts again in San Diego.
What makes them so strong is sort of how they build force. They come from like I said, the Great Basin of Nevada. They kind of end around Palmdale and they build up like power because of those mountain ranges there. Yeah, pit stop. It's like it holds it at bay, sort of builds up this energy, and then it's carried by the winds that are high above it. So then by the time it comes down through the mountains, it has some force to it. And it comes through the San Fernando Valley and goes all the way to Little Orange County over there. These Santa Ana winds create some of the most beautiful beach days we have, but they also are behind like some of the worst fires. Like it can make easily controllable fire very uncontrollable. It can carry fires farther.
You'll hear all about that soon.
It takes sparks. It moves them wherever it wants. It creates a fire. With all the weather technology out there, you can only really predict a Santa Ana wind by like a couple days in advance. Like you can predict like the whole season, but you can't predict like when the Santa Ana is going to hit, how big it's going to be, and when like its effects are going to be. I was reading an article about this in the Los Angeles magazine, and I mentioned this professor at UCLA. The winds seem to be the opposite of precipitation. Instead of a flow from the ocean to the desert, it goes in the opposite way. So it carries all this like
So it's like
desert
a
dry.
phantom rain.
Like a phantom rain. Yeah, like no Rain Man. And then it just dries everything up and makes everybody crazy. It's part of the same like mythological wind that like Western Europe has. They call it the Foehn winds, Foehn, Foehn.
Foehn winds.
Foehn winds. And also they have one in the Middle East called the Khamsin winds. It's just the kind of wind that's very powerful, and it has a lot of positive ions in it, so it makes everybody, there's static electricity in the air, everyone gets all crazy. People just start to develop like migraines and they get nauseous. Depression is more common there in the Foehn winds, as well as like menstrual difficulties, insomnia, circular
That explains it.
You're right there in the cove, brother. Office sick days increase. There's more accidents. The suicide rate goes up.
Office sick days increase.
That's what we're all worried about, isn't it?
This country needs to run on time.
During
No more sick days when I get elected president. No more wins either.
Cough all over everything. See if I care. You're going to type up that report. During October of 2008, when the article was written, the crime statistics went up, particularly domestic abuse. All on the rise when there's Santa Ana winds.
People just look for any excuse
Any excuse.
to do domestic abuse.
This has been Daniel Meekley.
Please remember, don't beat your kid.
These winds also carry things like pollen and dust and mold. They just make people irritable. It also picks up like powdered particles of ground up tires and landfill dust and rubble from old silver mines, and it just blasts us all with it.
So we're getting thrown with silver?
Yeah, silver.
Wow.
That's how the Silver Surfer was born. He was born in California. Just a normal naked man with a shaved head.
Just any regular surfer.
On the waves too much in Orange County, covered in silver. Now you can fly in space. Reading about the wind flow made me more irritable than the actual Santa Ana winds, though. I could say that. It was not boring. I kind of understood. I watched videos and like, this is how the winds build, but
Watch a video of the one piece of weather that isn't visible.
there's a lot of speculation about where the name comes from. A lot of people think that it originates from the Indian word of wind, which is Santana, which Spanish missionaries, probably getting a good look at the brutal wind, they liked how close it was to the word Satan, and since it was a hot wind, they're like, yeah, Santa Ana, Santana, whatever they're saying.
Or they thought it sounded a lot like Santana.
This music makes me want to listen to Santana. What about you? It was a Spanish missionary. Others say that it was named after St. Anne's Day, which is the day the Portola expedition was moving through Orange County in 1769 when they first encountered the storm. Another suggestion that it was named after the Mexican dictator Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna. Who knows? I don't really care. I found a couple examples of people talking about it. There's a guy, January 1847, there was U.S. forces led by Commodore Robert Stockton. They were camped in the Santa Ana Canyon. They're probably killing Mexicans and, taking over LA.
What else do you do in the Santa Ana Canyon?
Hide. In a diary, they mentioned having to take shelter in a deep ditch and hide from the hurricane, which they noted was unusual in California. And he notes the atmosphere was filled with particles of fine dust, and he could hardly see or breathe. Much of that was paraphrased, actually.
And to quote the great commandant, I can't see here, nor breathe.
Nor breathe can I. Yeah, there's a lot of mythology about the Santa Ana winds. Like I looked up the references to it. Beach Boys have a song on it. Randy Newman brings it up. It's mentioned a lot. It's sort of one of LA's things that like makes it like it's like the folklore.
I always, when I was growing up, because there were these fences next to my house that were like chain link fences. I think I lived in a prison yard.
It sounded like it.
There were dogs everywhere. And whenever the Santa Ana winds would come, they would make this like noise through the thing. So I thought that was the sound of the Santa Ana winds. But that's just wind. It's just wind through a fence.
There's two of my favorite writers talk about Santa Ana. Like I mentioned before, Raymond Chandler wrote this short story called The Red Wind. And he writes one of the best things about it. I'm going to read it, if you don't mind. The whole thing. 40 pages. There was a desert wind blowing that night. It was one of those hot, dry Santa Anas that come up through the mountain passes and curl your hair and make your nerves jump and your skin itch. On nights like that, every booze party ends in a fight. Meek little wives feel the edge of their carving knives. Meek.
It's like he's talking about us.
No, it's like he predicted that two nerds were going to sit in a hot, stuffy room at CSUN.
So Raymond Chandler invented podcasting. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Also, one of my favorite writers, Joan Didion, wrote an essay on it. Yeah, this is from Joan Didion. I recall being told when I first moved to Los Angeles and was living on an isolated beach that the Indians would throw themselves in the sea when the bad wind blew. I could see why. The Pacific turned ominously glossy during the Santa Ana period, and one woke in the night troubled not only by the peacocks screaming in the olive trees, but by the eerie absence of surf. The heat was surreal. The sky had a yellow cast, the kind of light sometimes called earthquake weather. My only neighbor would not come out of her house for days, and there was no lights at night, and her husband roamed the place with a machete. One day he would tell me that he heard a trespasser, the next a rattlesnake. It just makes people crazy. It's just it's crazy people.
I associate it with earthquake weather also, strangely.
Yeah, I do too, yeah.
I think that's when the earthquake hit. That's why.
What month did the earthquake hit? We should know that.
Hey, we're not doing an episode on that yet. What do you expect from us?
Have we wiki vomited all over it yet?